We live in a world where everyone wants to be extraordinary. Everyone wants to win. Everyone wants the highlight reel. We scroll through other people's best moments and mistake them for maps. We measure ourselves by a mirror that only shows the filtered parts. But what if trying to be extraordinary is exactly what's ruining your happiness? This is the book Mark Manson wrote to slap a little honesty into that glossy motivational noise. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a FCK, and it outraged people and relieved people in equal measure. Why? Because it tells a truth we secretly already know. You have limited energy. You can't care about everything, and not caring about most things, if you do it right, is how you actually find something worth giving a FCK about. Mark doesn't give you a pep talk. He gives you a mirror. He points at your priorities and says, choose. This book became popular because it broke a promise that modern self-help makes, that relentless positivity leads to success and peace. Instead, Mark argues that pain, struggle, and limits are the real currency of a meaningful life. That's a sobering message for people drowning in options, addicted to distraction, and terrified of saying no. Let me tell you a story. Imagine a young person, late teens, new job, shiny phone, 8,000 friends online, and the subtle, unpleasant hum of comparison. She posts a picture and waits. Each like is a tiny relief. Each comment is a soft affirmation that she exists. Then a friend gets a better job, a better holiday, a better relationship. Suddenly the feed is a scoreboard, and she's losing. She exhausts herself trying to care about everything. Work, image, dating apps, side hustles, health, trends. She has no energy left for depth. Her life becomes a collage of half-efforts and borrowed meanings. That's the illusion of constant happiness and success. The culture sells you the idea that you should always be positive, always improving, always winning. Mark says that's toxic. It breeds fragility. If the goal is to avoid discomfort at all costs, you will never build strength. If you run from every negative feeling, you'll never learn the lessons that come through pain. Happiness is a side effect of solving problems, not a goal you can chase directly. What does not giving a FCK actually mean? People think it means being indifferent, reckless, or cruel. But Mark means something much steadier. It's the discipline of choosing what deserves your finite measure of concern. Not giving a FCK is not about being a nihilist. It's about being selective. Think of your attention and anxiety as coins. You have a limited number of coins. Spend them impulsively and you'll have nothing left when a real crisis appears. Spend them wisely and you'll have something that matters. Here's the brutal, useful takeaway. You get to choose your struggles. Life will always throw problems at you. Your job is not to find a problem-free life. Your job is to pick the problems you want to solve. This is the subtle magic. If you love your work, the problems that come with it feel meaningful. If you chase status, the problems will feel hollow. So values matter. What you choose to struggle for defines who you become. Mark makes the point about embracing pain and failure like this. Imagine you're training for a physical thing. Learning guitar, running a 10-kilometer race, becoming a better friend. The improvement doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from repeatedly facing it. Pain is the contractor of value. It builds character through the repetition of small losses and small gains. The key is responsibility. Not responsibility for everything, but responsibility for how you respond. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you interpret and what you choose to do next. There's a story Mark tells, and it's the kind of story that presses a button in your chest. A man loses everything: his job, family, reputation. He could be a victim, shouting at the unfairness of life, or he could choose to accept that life is messy and decide what to do next. Acceptance doesn't mean liking what happened. It means no longer lying to yourself about the state of things. Once you stop lying, you can allocate energy to real solutions. That's not easy. It's the work of choosing discomfort, because discomfort often leads to growth. Now let's talk about limited FCKs. This is the concept you'll keep returning to when you clean your mental house. Your mental energy, your willpower, your anxiety quota, call it what you want, is limited. If you waste it on social status, on petty slights, on the weather, on buzzwords, you will be depleted. Mark suggests an economy of cares. Make a small list. Prioritize. Say no. Protect your attention like a rare resource. Most people treat attention like sand. Mark says treat it like gold. What's the power of saying no? It's radical. Saying no creates boundaries. Boundaries create identity. When you refuse certain requests, you define yourself by what you won't accept. It's not cruelty, it's clarity. The person who can say no has an inner compass. The person who says yes to every request dissolves into a sea of obligations. You don't have to be mean. You have to be principled. When you say no to distractions, you say yes to depth. Now we get to values, and Mark is merciless here. Values are supposed to be your North Star, but most people choose values that are fuzzy or outright self-destructive, chasing money for status, chasing approval, or chasing novelty. Those values are externally defined. They rely on comparison and ego. Mark calls them bad values because they are about wanting more without meaning. Good values are chosen internally and are reality-based. Honesty, creativity, patience, courage, and compassion. These values are actionable. They offer a path to behave differently right now. How do you tell a good value from a bad one? A good value is controllable and leads to more freedom. A bad value is not controllable and chains you to outcomes. Wanting to be liked is a bad value. You can't control everyone's opinion. Wanting to be honest is a good value. You can control your honesty. Wanting to win every argument is bad. Wanting to learn from disagreement is good. This shift from external validation to internal metrics is the hinge of the book. Here's something that stabs many of us: the paradox of self-improvement. The more you try to become a perfect version of yourself, the more you highlight your deficiencies. You become obsessed with being better, and that obsession becomes another shallow value. Mark warns that the pursuit of constant improvement can be its own addiction. It's more honest to have less ambitious goals that align with your core values. Aim for incremental betterment. Accept that sometimes you'll regress. Growth is not a straight line, and that's okay. Let's pause and breathe. Because underneath all this is a real human fear. What if I make the wrong choices? What if I refuse the right things and lose something important? Mark's response is simple and raw. Failure and loss are inevitable. You will lose things, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can choose to anchor yourself in values that survive losses. Embracing mortality, the acceptance of death, gives life clarity. When you recognize that your time is finite, the trivialities fall away like leaves. There's a lesson he pulls from existential philosophy: meaning requires struggle. If life had no limits, meaning would evaporate. We find purpose not in endless pleasure, but in worthwhile pain. The person who cares about something bigger than themselves is the person who will endure hardship for it. In this sense, meaning is a product of responsibility. When you pick responsibilities that you care about, you craft a life that matters. Mark gives a brutal example. Think of a relationship. If your relationship is built on the idea that it should always make you happy, it will crumble the instant unhappiness arrives. But if it's built on shared values, honest communication, and the willingness to work through problems, it can weather the inevitable storms. The same applies to careers. If you expect your job to be effortless joy, disappointment follows. If you choose a career because you value the work itself, you'll find satisfaction in practice, not in promises. One of the most practical parts of Mark's message is the idea of embracing limits. Limits free you. When you admit you're not great at everything, you stop pretending and start specializing. Limits force trade-offs. Trade-offs force decisions. Decisions create identity. Identity empowers action. So stop pretending like you can care about every issue or chase every opportunity. Choose a few things and lean into them with stubborn compassion. Mark also dismantles the idea that vulnerability equals weakness. In fact, vulnerability is the raw material of connection. When you admit your faults, you allow other people to be honest too. That creates real intimacy. The polished image of perfection isolates you. The messy, flawed version fosters belonging. Saying "I don't know" or "I was wrong" are powerful because they show you as human, not as flawless. Let's talk about metrics. Modern life gives us so many metrics: followers, likes, bank balance, job title. These are seductive because they're measurable. But measurable doesn't mean meaningful. Mark argues you should choose metrics that line up with deep values. Replace "how many followers" with "how often did I tell the truth today?" Replace how much money did I make with did I earn money in a way consistent with my values? It's not that money or status are evil. They're just poor substitutes if they replace meaning. There is a section where Mark goes deeper into the psychology of blame. Blame is easy because it lets you avoid responsibility. It's their fault is a comfort. But when you consistently blame external forces, you give your power away. Taking responsibility is not accepting blame for things you cannot control. It's owning your reactions and choices. That's how agency returns. And then there's a bit of dark humor. Mark doesn't sugarcoat life. He points out that most of our problems are not catastrophic. They are banal and self-inflicted. We worry about being special, but being special is often just being better at complaining. The antidote? Practice humility. Laugh at your pretensions. Recognize the absurdity of assuming the universe revolves around your feelings. That's not cynicism, it's liberation. As the book moves toward its close, Mark hits us with mortality again. Knowing you'll die is the final clarifier. It strips away illusions and makes values obvious. If you had 1 year to live, what would matter? The answer reveals your real priorities. You can pretend to care about many things, but death makes the truth unavoidable. Use that truth like a compass. So how do you put this into practice? Start with small experiments. Write down your top 5 values. Ask whether they're chosen or inherited. Swap external values for internal ones. Practice saying no to one thing every week. Let a small failure teach you something instead of turning it into a personal catastrophe. Take responsibility for one area of your life where you've been blaming others. Notice how your energy returns when you stop caring about the wrong things. Here's an image to hold. Imagine you're a gardener. Your attention is your water. You have a small can. You can water many plants a little and watch them droop. Or you can choose 2 or 3 plants and pour the water into them until they thrive. Most of us water everything and then wonder why nothing blossoms. The subtle art is choosing which plants to nurture. Now let's handle the objections you will hear. Some will say, "Isn't this just selfish?" Others will whisper, "Doesn't this justify laziness?" The answer is no. Choosing what to care about is the opposite of selfishness. It's the only way to be generous in a sustainable way. If you give everything away, you have nothing left. If you say yes to every demand, you become brittle and exhausted. Real generosity requires reserves. It needs someone who has carved space to be present. Another objection. What if I choose wrong? You will. We all do. Choosing well is a skill, not a one-time verdict. You experiment. You test. You fail. You recalibrate. Treat choices like experiments rather than destiny, and the fear of being wrong shrinks. When you change direction because your values evolve, that change is not failure. It's growth. Try a simple ritual tonight. Take a sheet of paper. Draw 2 columns. In column 1, write everything that occupies your mind: work, social media, grudges, bills, fitness, news, hobbies. In column 2, write who or what benefits when you give attention to each item. Circle the items that connect to your deepest values. Cross out 3 things that do not. Next week, protect the crossed out time as your own. Watch how your energy shifts. One last story. An older person I know, retired, ordinary life, wakes up and writes letters to a few people every week. He cares for a small group of friends and family with fierce attention. He didn't chase fame. He chose depth. His life looks modest on paper but incandescent in practice. That's the point. Depth beats breadth. Meaning beats metrics. The subtle art isn't flashy. It's disciplined editing. It asks you to confront discomfort, embrace limits, and prioritize what matters. It asks honesty about your values and courage to act on them. Trade the anxiety of endless possibility for the peace of intentional commitment. Close your eyes and imagine the end of your life. What would you regret? Act today in small, stubborn ways to reduce that regret. Stop caring about the wrong things. Start caring fiercely about the right ones. The permission slip you waited for was never coming. You have it.